Hello and welcome to Fratello Talks. I'm your host Nacho. This week I am joined by my colleagues
Morgan
and
Thomas.
And we are going to be discussing some of our watch pet peeves.
Mm-hmm.
So the little things, little details that we dislike about certain watches. We'll get into some specifics, but first, let's see what's on the wrist. Morgan, what is on your wrist today?
A watch I like, and I have nothing to complain about. No, this is not true, but I'm wearing my Speedmaster Professional on a CNS black NATO strap.
Mm-hmm.
It has kind of a texture, and people are asking me about this strap. So yeah, if you were wondering, it's a CNS strap.
Okay. That's one of the ones that has like the cotton. It's like part nylon, part cotton.
Yeah,
kind
kind
like
of.
It's a bit softer.
Yeah, but it's still not too soft because there's also some that are really, really soft that I also super like, but this is not the same.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very nice. And you've cut the bottom of the...
Pretty much always.
Okay.
Yeah, I cut the extra.
Is that a pet peeve? The extra keeper? No,
Actually, now that you're talking about that one, but it's not about a watch. It's about a bracelet, but a strap.
Yeah.
But I don't. It had some unnecessary bulk for me.
Yeah.
And if I lose a spring bar, it will still.
It still works.
Strapped on my wrist. So
cool. Yeah, I think we're gonna be once we get into it, it's gonna be a bit of a rant. But hey, hopefully it'll also be.
I'm French.
Fun.
I like ranting.
Hopefully it'll be fun for our listeners and those who tune in to watch. I'm gonna skip you for a second, Thomas, and I am wearing a brand new watch that arrived just the day before yesterday.
A very cool one,
and it is the Arcan Ultram. So it's the brand's second offering and a follow-up to the Instrumentum, which was the brand's dive watch. And this is their GMT. So it's a sporty titanium grade 2, I believe, GMT, which uses a movement with a module on it in order to provide this additional time zone and day-night indicator and the date at 6. And been wearing it all day yesterday and so far today, and
it's super nice.
I really like it.
Yeah,
really like it.
From that angle, and the strap has a nice taper.
Yeah,
it's not too thick, even with the model on it.
Yeah,
and it's really legible, and it's
for sure,
super nice.
For sure, I think Kenneth did a killer job with this one, and I'll be happy to wear it for quite often. So I'll try to switch it up for wrist checks though. And Thomas, what's on your wrist? I think
I can't tell. It's a very exciting time as I am releasing my VPC this afternoon, and that's what I'm wearing. So
still
a couple more hours. Yeah, when this video drops, a few more hours this afternoon at 2. It's releasing, so I have to keep my sleeve down for now.
I can't wait to see it.
Fair enough. We'll still have footage of you rolling your sleeved wrist.
Yeah, you want to put that in?
Viewers,
all right. Okay.
No, but cool. Very exciting stuff. So today, 2 p.m. If you're listening to this on the Thursday, and so people should tune into Fratello and to the VPC website to find out more. So very exciting stuff.
Thank you for that.
Yes, but on a less positive note. Let's talk about some pet peeves. So, Morgan, we can maybe start with you.
Okay,
what are some things that truly annoy you when you see a watch, when you start reading the spec sheet, when you have a look at it, and you notice these things?
For me,
they totally piss you off.
Yeah, I don't know if it pisses me off. Yes, it does, actually. I won't buy a watch like that, but accuracy for me would be the first.
Okay.
For me, I like a watch to be accurate around COSC. Yeah, COSC, something like. Even if it's not COSC, if the like my Serica, mine is not COSC. Now these are COSC certified, but back then when I bought mine, it was not certified COSC. But I want a watch to be accurate. When I see, that's what also keeps me away a little bit from Seiko, for example, because usually their movements, at least on paper, or like plus or minus 40 seconds a day. No, maybe not minus, but plus 40 seconds a day, some of them. And I'm like, I like my watch to be a little bit accurate.
Right.
Yeah.
Where would you personally draw the line? Is it like if it's noticeably gaining or losing time within a couple of days, that's kind of where you draw the line?
Yeah, Okay. Exactly. Okay. That pisses me off.
Okay.
I like
So
watch.
I see it in your eyes, actually.
So angry.
Yeah, it's just like I will not enjoy wearing the watch because I'm like a nerd and I don't know if you guys do the same. I hope I'm not the only one, but sometimes I will grab my phone after a couple of days that I'm wearing a watch and I will check the second hand on the little clock on the iPhone and I will compare it with my watch, and if it's nice, I'm like,
You're like,
yeah, that's good. I like that.
Okay.
And when it's all over the place, I'm like, I might wear
A little
another
disappointed.
watch. Yeah.
I have to admit, I don't really set the seconds in.
Yeah, so that's the thing.
Really?
That's just
Okay.
something
Yeah,
for
no.
me.
Okay.
I
And I'm
rarely
doing
ever
it
do.
like, I'm putting the second hand at noon and I'm waiting with my phone again. That's my best tool. And when it's like on time,
You just
I
click the
will
crown in.
put back the crown on.
Okay.
I know now why you say you're so busy.
But I do the same, to be fair. So in the morning, if I pick up my watch and I'm having to wind it and set it, I will do the same. I'll pull up
See, I'm not the only one.
the clock app and I'll set that unless I'm in a rush. Then if I'm in a rush, then I'll quickly just set the time loosely and just do it. But
Never do that, man.
yeah. No, got to be accurate. You got to be accurate. Hey, fair enough. That's okay. But that's one thing. Thomas, let's go over to you. What's one of your pet peeves? And keeping in mind that these are not necessarily deal breakers, right? You still own a Seiko. You have an SKX 007. I don't think I've ever seen you wearing it, but you still have it. But so these are not necessarily deal breakers. That could be a topic for another day. But these are just pet peeves.
Yeah, it's something that.
So Thomas, hit us with yours.
I've written about mine quite a bit, but bad Endlinks is like my number one thing. I cannot stand it when a brand designs a nice watch, then picks a generic bracelet from a catalog, and then puts some scrap metal in between to sort of put the two together. I'm like, come on, you cannot design a watch and then just stop at 80%. You need to make a nice Endlink. It's part of the design. It's part of the ergonomics. It's part of the aesthetics. And the ones I particularly have a really bad vibe about is the ones that look like separate links but aren't. Like you have a 3-row bracelet, like an oyster or a president or something in that style, and then you have a single block end link, and it's sort of coarsely milled to vaguely represent 3 links, but it really doesn't, and it also doesn't quite follow the lugs of the watch. I'm like, come on, that's unacceptable. Yeah, it's such an eyesore. So it's a big one for me. It's actually a deal breaker, to be honest.
We share that not as a deal breaker, but certainly as a pet peeve. I have to say that's also one where for me I think that line could have just been a little bit sharper. And sometimes when maybe it only comes halfway up the case, and then you get a lot of that case flank, that sort of brushed case flank,
or massive male end links.
Yeah, it's just a little bit. Ugly. So yeah, like a nice fitted end link is a beautiful thing.
The weird thing though, there's one Rolex that does a male end link often on the oyster style that is milled out of a single piece. So that would be 2 strikes in my book. But then they do it so sharply and they're so well curved that for some reason it works, which is really weird. But that's one that sort of gets away with it.
Yeah, but then they do it really great, as you said, because it's like you have really volume in that middle male link that is really well made still. Yeah. And I think also you were talking like designing a watch like up to 80% and leaving the rest behind. Yeah. But I think it's also probably a matter of costs. And
of course,
those last 20% would raise the price of the watch probably by, I don't know which percentage, but probably way too much for people to then be able to buy the watch or be able to have that value in the watch. For sure. You know,
for sure.
So I guess it's also
yeah. I think that this is probably perhaps for you part of a wider pet peeve, which is like these sort of cost-cutting things that are fairly noticeable, where you think, but then just maybe don't do a bracelet, right? I mean, if you're not going to do it completely well, then perhaps
put it on
it's
a
better
nice
to
rubber.
put it on a good rubber strap or a good leather strap or a solid NATO, and then just not every watch needs to have a bracelet.
Exactly.
So I think that's part of it. But no, fair enough. That's definitely share that one. I'll start with my first. It's unnecessary open casebacks.
Yeah,
and you could argue whether they're necessary or not, right? I mean, it's in the end, it's a buyer's market in a way. So like people, the consumers of watches often will probably enjoy an open caseback, but at some point, I have to say, I don't know. For me, looking at randomly, it's been sort of top of mind. Looking at the Seamaster Professional, the current SMP 300M, that has an open caseback, and in some way, I get why. The movement inside, it's nice to look at. It's perhaps not the nicest movement to look at. It's got some interesting finishing, but. Anyway,
I kind of like how it looks.
There's a bit of mileage may vary in terms of how people find that movement, and I get it, right? It's got the coaxial thing. It's an impressive thing, but to be honest, for a dive watch, I'd rather just have a nice closed caseback. I look at my Seamaster; it's got the wave pattern on the 2254. The caseback is just you have the medallion with the what's it called, the hippocampus, and it's just really nice. And I don't know whether or not this cuts back on slimness of a watch.
No, because I checked. Because we had a couple of Seamasters here.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
The normal one, like the
standard one that we just talked about.
The standard one in all the different colors. And for example, the Paris one, which has a closed caseback, and also the Summer Blue Seamaster also has a closed caseback.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the same dimensions.
And the Necton.
Then, the Necton also.
As well.
And then you have bigger Seamaster. I'm not going to talk about these because, of course, the slimness will be probably different.
Sure.
But on the closed caseback of the same Seamaster sharing the same proportion, doesn't affect the thickness.
Okay.
It's exactly the same.
It depends on construction, actually, because sapphire is stiffer than steel. So in theory, you could get away with a thinner sapphire before it starts warping. But then the construction matters because there's an additional seal in there, which is potentially a point of entry. So it's a tough one. It doesn't really like. It's popular belief to say it's always thicker, but that's not the case.
No, that's not the case. But the Seamaster, the James Bond one, the titanium one, is slimmer with also closed caseback.
Okay, interesting.
I checked, and it
that's
shares
a titanium.
So maybe they use maybe with the closed caseback. Actually, they could maybe make it slimmer in the end. If I
it depends on construction.
What you do.
Yeah, but still,
it doesn't matter.
For me, it is a bit of a pet peeve. Sometimes I just feel like, well, it's being done in a sort of gratuitous way, and I get it for perhaps for the non-enthusiast, just general watch buying public, it's a nice touch. But for me, I wish that at least the option was maybe available, right? Like with the Moonwatch, right? You have the closed caseback version, and then obviously with Hesselite, and then you have the open caseback version with the Sapphire. So at least you are able to pick there, but that's my first fairly arbitrary pet peeve, first of many.
I'm agree with you in a sense, because for me a showcasing a movement, you need to have something to showcase. It's
got to be worth showing. That's the thing.
I mean, if you take a look at the Longer, for example. And of course, you want an open caseback because this is a work of art, you know.
Yeah. But on a dive watch, which is ultimately it's supposed to be a tool. These days, it's more a luxury object, which is probably why a luxury product.
The Omega movement is not ugly at all. I saw so much worse movement.
Yeah,
but
with open caseback.
And I'm like. Yeah, if it was closed, that would be fun. I like a good caseback with a nice decoration, and Omega knows how to do that, actually.
Definitely.
Because Rolex, they close it, there's nothing on it, boom.
Which is also nice, because then you can customize it. You can customize it, engrave it, do whatever you want. It's, put some clever words down. Yeah. Cool. So, Morgan, what is your second pet peeve?
Second pet peeve.
Pet peeve.
Pet peeves, sorry. And it would be a bad AR on a watch.
Okay.
On a crystal.
But you're a photographer, so this affects you. This affects you far more personally.
Exactly.
Than
but
most.
I mean, I just bought now it's been quite some time, but my Seamaster 300M is a little bit old, from 2006, and it doesn't have a great AR.
I think just on the inside, right?
Yeah, probably. But I don't really mind it because it still has a dark dial, so it's okay.
Yeah.
But man, when I take a look at your Hamilton khaki fit, for example, and I take a look at the watch, actually it's kind of the same with the Speedmaster, but again, I don't know, it's not as striking as on the
I think the Hamilton,
but man, I see my nose, I see my bold face in the thing. So I'm like, what time is it? Is nose time? What is the,
Nose o'clock. No,
I don't know.
The Hamilton is particularly bad.
But
do you want AR on the outside as well?
Not necessarily because
that's a deal breaker for me, to be honest.
It can be scratched.
I hate it when there's a sapphire crystal and then you look in the light and it's full of scratches and it's the AR coating.
So I much prefer having a good one under it, and that's it.
What about colored AR?
Well, I don't really care, to be honest.
Colored AR.
I know what you're talking about. I know what you have in mind right now.
Well, I'm thinking of obviously of Breitling.
Obviously.
But I was also thinking of that Planet Ocean that we had in with this bright blue AR.
Oh yeah.
But as soon as you get a scratch on it, you just spot it right away, and it's a bit.
I once had it on a watch, and I spent about an hour rubbing it off with diamond paste, and I completely rubbed the AR coating off the outside.
You're not the only person.
It's just so much nicer.
Yeah.
Okay, you go. I mean, the blue AR on IWC watches obviously can be a little bit distracting sometimes. On the black dial, you're like, it makes the black dial look transparent? Blue. Yeah, because then it doesn't serve the purpose correctly. I feel like sometimes because then I see just a blue dial watch.
You see the reflection, but blue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's kind of
but there's ARs and there's ARs, right? I think that some of them are very bright in that sense. I mean, and very colorful as well. And then there's others that just work really well. You almost don't even think about it, and you're able to just clearly read the time and have good visibility. Yeah. I think it's one of those things that either works well or it doesn't. And when it works well, it's fantastic. You barely think about it, and when it doesn't, it is noticeably annoying.
Yeah.
Definitely a pet peeve.
Yeah.
Cool. Thomas, what's your second?
My second is overly intricate dials, as in finishing, and especially on tool watches, like a vignette sunburst dial on a dive watch. I'm like, what the hell are you doing? I really like an old school gloss black, matte black dial.
Yeah, it's nice.
Minimum printing. We'll get back to that later. That's another pet peeve. But I mean, you don't have to put a vignette effect on everything. It looks so cheesy to me. I always feel like the more like if you put an additional color and an additional surface finishing and a vignette and all of that, you stack it on top of each other, and the watch just becomes more and more gimmicky.
Yeah.
And I feel it's a bit of a trend because watches are more and more designed to be fancy rather than to be good. They're just designed to be, well, advanced or whatever.
Sure.
And I feel it just gets cheesier and cheesier because of it.
What about also along that vein, misuse of color? Like a chronograph where the chronograph hands are not like they're all the small hands are the same color, and it's not like the small running seconds is one color and then all the chronograph hands are one color, or like a GMT that also isn't correctly colored.
That annoys the hell out of me because it tells me that the designer has only worried about making it look fancy rather than giving it a function, because you can use color really well to separate functions and stuff, but and it can still be visually attractive. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So no, that's definitely a pet peeve of mine.
Yeah. It's I think as a global pet peeve, and I think hopefully we'll all agree, it's this transformation from a purely functional object into it's just decoration. This color is just a color. It doesn't matter. Whereas like back in the day, you would have like a very complicated dial, which would serve a good purpose, like a telemeter dial, something like that, where you have multiple scales and you have one scale in blue, one scale in red, and then everything is still very legible. It's still a very functional object, very true to its purpose. And these days it's a bit more like, it just looks cool. And that's fine, but
I think it exposes us. That's the whole thing. I mean, we use our watches as embellishments, as luxuries, as fancy little things, but we don't want them to be too explicit about it.
Yeah.
Please pretend to be functional, and then we can use it as embellishment, but don't sell us a piece of embellishment. I think that's the nuance.
I think what you don't like is the gimmicky part of thing.
For sure.
Like really, I have to say I love Grand Seiko. I haven't found one for me yet. But for example, I feel like sometimes on the dials, it becomes too gimmicky. Now the texture feels almost cheap. Doesn't mean it's cheap. It doesn't mean it's cheap or whatever. It's just what I feel like when I take a look at the new dials and texture of this and texture of that. You buy the story or not, this is not the point. But yeah, man, sometimes it's too much. It's not quiet enough, let's say.
You mentioned Grand Seiko and made me think of another pet peeve, but we'll get to that. We'll get to that eventually.
I know what you're talking about. Okay.
You also mentioned storytelling, and I think that sometimes that's another pet peeve that we can all perhaps share, and it's the excessive marketing nonsense and sort of like just weaving a tall tale of whatever, and it has become a bit of an inside joke. I mean, with Grand Seiko, it's maybe not that over the top, but it can be a little bit like we looked at out of the window.
The lights on the lake in the morning of October.
The worst one I had
between 10 and 12, and
it's a bit much, but it's also very Japanese, and it's also, hey, I mean, good for them. It's an artistic process, and who are we to question?
Nice. I like it. I like it.
But it can be a bit.
I recently had one where there was this entire fabricated story of a guy driving through the desert, and he looked up, and in the sky was floating this huge watch of this specific model. And it was a completely made up story, and it was complete BS. And I was reading it, and I was, okay, this is not going in my story. I mean, what mind, were they on? I mean, come on.
In my mind, I pictured the opening scene to Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, right?
I don't know, but
this is bad country. This is watch country.
I feel like if you're a PR agency or you're a marketer and you're writing that stuff, what do you expect? Do you think like people at Fratello go like, oh, wow, we're driving through the desert. Amazing. I'll tell this story. Come on. We're all adults here.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh my God.
But hey, I mean,
so that was the...
So yeah, I feel you on that one.
I don't know.
Perfect. Okay. I'll go with the one you reminded me of, actually. I don't like dial side power reserve indicators.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Especially, I'm okay if it's like a, and this is weird to say, but a Portuguese or 7 days, because then it's balanced and it works.
It looks like a sub-dial.
It looks like a sub-dial, so in a way it almost works. I also don't mind like very vintage watches. I think there's some Jaeger-LeCoultre models that have it at 12, and it's kind of like a sweep. But for me, and again, not to pick necessarily on Grand Seiko, but they just tend to be a little bit guilty of it. And I think specifically of the Mist Flake GMT. Which for me would be a damn near perfect watch if it weren't for that power reserve indicator off center on the side of the watch that just feels like a complete afterthought. And they have movements that where it sits on the back of the watch, and I think that's quite nice. Yeah. But when it feels a bit gratuitous and unnecessary, I think I'd rather not have that on there.
In the end, I don't mind it, but I don't need it. Because if I'm wearing my Speedmaster every morning, I will wind it. If I'm wearing an automatic watch, if I wear it for a couple of days consecutive, it's not going to stop anyway. And if I just put it on the watch box and take it back a few days later, while it stopped, I put it back in.
I think what doesn't help with the Mist Flake you're referring to is that the indicator is actually a quarter circle itself.
Yeah.
But then the way it's positioned, it isn't concentric with the rest of the dial. It's sort of anti the rest of the dial, which makes it look quite jarring. And I think that, I don't know, if they just flipped it around, I think that would help a lot, actually.
That's true.
Because then it's echoing the shape of the dial.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So that's definitely a pet peeve for me. So
I also see it in your eyes. You're like,
oh, man. Yeah. It's like for me, that one. That's probably of the ones that I'm going to talk about today. That's probably the one that gets closest to being an actual deal breaker for me.
Yeah, it is.
I think it is. It's definitely a deal breaker.
It is.
We've heard you say no to watches because of it.
Yeah,
we know it is a deal breaker.
Absolutely a deal breaker. Okay, so Morgan, let's go with your third.
So the third one for me,
who's counting at this point? But
part of the, I mean, it's part of the watch because the watch comes on a strap or a bracelet.
Yeah.
But on a strap, I'm not a fan of Deployant clasps.
Okay.
In the first place, when I first get into watches, and we talked about that the other day together, but we were like, "Oh, this is cool! Like this screams luxury.
It seems
like,
fancy.
I have a Deployant clasp. It's
wow,
it's amazing, you know." But in the end, I don't feel it's really comfortable. I feel like it has unnecessary bulk under the watch, and I don't really need it, you know. And it's just like complicated to put on. It's just like I don't know. I feel for me it's useless. I much prefer a regular buckle, like a nice buckle with nice texture on it, and like with nice a nice shape and the brand logo and whatever if you want on it. That's perfectly fine, but Deployant clasp. It's just I'm not a huge fan.
I think especially when there's no alternative choice. Like sometimes with some brands you will have the option of a regular pin buckle and a folding clasp or deployant. So I think that's one thing. If while we're on the subject of clasps and buckles, I think that there's quite a few pet peeves that go around it. It's not the watch itself, like you say, but especially in the case of a bracelet, I think it should be considered as part of the watch itself. Absolutely.
Yeah, of course, it's super. It's as important as the watch itself. If you don't have the watch, like if you don't feel the watch like sitting well on your wrist and comfortable, because some bracelet can be not comfortable at all.
For sure.
Then for me, I won't enjoy wearing it.
Yeah. So here's a small list off the top of my head of annoying things
on the top of my head.
Pet peeves regarding folding clasps and things like this. So the first one is I really dislike when watch brands put the strap on backwards, so that the tail end comes on the sort of up through the bottom of your wrist.
That I don't mind, but it's a deploying clasp, so actually
it annoys me. It's upside down. Fix it. Put it the other way around. That would be the first thing I would do. I'd be like, nope. This is I would probably just change the strap completely, but
that's true.
But it's like it's upside down. Anyway, whatever. That's one. Another one would be a lack of toolless micro adjust on a clasp, especially with like high end watches. I think it's got to be a given at this point. And I love my 2254, but man, I had to get that second half link. Otherwise, it was just not possible to wear the bracelet. It was either way too tight, way too loose, and you have a dive extension, which whether that's useful or not depends on the person. But man, I'd rather just have a toolless micro adjust. And I think a lot of brands are doing super well with that, down to even micro brands, to be honest.
And new brands that are coming on this afternoon.
Perhaps.
I'm not saying, but
it's well, we'll hear about it. But that's one thing. And then another thing, when it comes to clasp, it could also be a deal breaker, to be honest. But when you have a butterfly deployment clasp on a bracelet, and that already is like, it's going to be a bit of a pain to size, whatever. Man, as soon as it has like a male tab and a female tab that you have to do it one way
before the other,
nothing is worse than the feeling of like, I'm going to quickly put this on, and then you're, it's wrong, and then open it again, and then it's so fiddly and it's so unnecessary, and unfortunately, a lot of brands do it. I get it; it looks cool. You have a little logo on your clasp, but man,
but you can also fix it, because the other day I shot the tank solar beat from Gerard.
Okay, yeah.
And he has it on a bracelet.
Okay.
And there's a male and female, and not ending,
the
but
fold over.
Thingy.
Yeah.
But you can close the one you want in first, because because there's just a hole in the other thing. So you just put it, and if you want to put the other side,
it's like it'll fold over
exactly.
regardless.
So if you flip if you close the female one before the male one, doesn't matter.
Yeah. But
that's okay.
The issue is more when you do have like a tab that forces you to you can't close it. It's so annoying. That's my rant finished on folding buckles and bracelets.
It was heartfelt. I could feel it.
My god, it feels good to get this out, guys. This is like a therapy session today.
Okay,
perfect. Who are we on? Let's go with you, Tom.
I have one more. I am really sensitive to the text on dials. I'm sticking with dials here for a moment.
Okay.
And there's a couple things. First of all, I really don't like that so many brands, and this, if you've been following my own project, you'll know that I have some skin in the game here, but I don't like when brands just use very plain generic typography on their dials.
Pretty much all of them today.
Pretty much all of them, like Arial font or something, and it's like, come on, this is also part of a design.
Yeah, should be something we talk about at some point, because man, it goes all the way to Patek.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, of course.
And another in addition is if there's too much text, and if it's a whole bunch of different fonts used. And I think the first contender that comes to mind
I'm looking at my watch right now.
No. The biggest offender to me is Zodiac.
Oh, really?
Who really do like 5 different fonts, I think.
Okay.
Seiko has a bit of a
Seiko.
Tendency to do it. Yeah.
Prospex in one font, Seiko in one font, a water
and I think typography, and this is something I learned from working with a typographer. I mean, I wasn't, I'm by no means an expert myself, but I do have I have developed a bit of an eye for it, I think. Sure. Typography and typesetting and combining fonts is really an art, and you really have to know how to put two types together and how they sort of interact and how they gel. You can't just slap 5 different fonts on something and, well, one is super classical and one is completely modern, and it looks so messy. And I think it's something that really deserves more attention, because if a brand gets it right, then people won't notice. You barely ever hear people talk about it, but the DAO is just so calm and so nice and so balanced. And that's the thing. It's like at first glance, you're like, oh, yeah, that works.
Yeah,
and
but
that's the thing.
You're talking about that, and I was talking about my Speedmaster, because obviously there's different fonts, whether on the clasp of the bracelet that comes with it, on the not the current one, but the old one, the one we have. Yeah, you have a different like fonts on it, and also on the dial, because I have the Omega Classic font, and then Speedmaster is written like the old way, I would say, and then you have a really classic and straightforward professional also under it. So already I have 3 lines on the text on the dial, and it's 3 different fonts.
But I'm not saying, by the way, you should use
like
just
it.
one. Yeah, no, exactly.
I like it. It's just
but the right combinations work really well. But
it's like mixing a cocktail, right? Like you got to get the right ingredients. You got to get the right proportions, because otherwise, if you switch proportions around, man, you're going to be drinking a cup of bitters with a dash of whiskey in it, and that's gonna taste like garbage. I mean, I don't know. I don't drink cocktails, so that was a really poor example.
Me neither, but I believe you.
We'll take someone's word for it. And I think my final one is water resistance, or a lack thereof. I find that a sports watch, whether it's a field watch or whether it's a sporty chronograph, looking at your wrist again, Morgan. Not to bash the Speedy, right? The Speedy, Speedy's fine. The Speedy sits on this like golden podium, and it's it can do its own thing. I'm not gonna fault it. But hey, if it had 100 meters of water resistance, I would like that. Nice. Yeah. But that's for me. So like if I see like a sporty watch, if it's a dress watch or something that's far from being sporty, that's fine. But I would rather brands err on the side of more water resistance rather than less. So looking at the positive side, I see a lot of brands like Certina, and I believe there was another brand recently, I can't remember it off the top of my head, but they've also been increasing the water resistance from 200 to 300, which is probably just a formality in testing, right? I think the gaskets and the construction probably holds up just fine. But even on something like my Hamilton Khaki Field Automatic, again, I enjoy that's 100 meters of water resistance. And the mechanical one is 50. And that for me, I'm like, well, I'd rather have the automatic because I get 50 more meters, and the difference between 50 and 100 can be quite significant. It gives you just a little bit more peace of mind. Yeah, exactly. And I knew that I've actually jumped in a pool with that watch on my wrist and been swimming a little bit, and it was completely fine. And I had peace of mind regardless of the lack of screw down crown. But for me, all sporty watches should ideally have a screw-down crown and at least 100 meters of water resistance. Yeah. That's a bit of a pet peeve.
I agree.
And certainly not a deal breaker. But
no, it's not a deal breaker for
the thing is, it's not that hard. You really have to forget about
prioritizing
it
watch,
if you're going to mess it up in that sense.
Yeah.
I mean,
Cool. But then you have to be not too... the other day we were shooting a campaign in the forest, and we were with Ball of Salmon. Hello, Tom. And it was...
friend of the show.
I was wearing my Speedmaster. It was a bright sunny day, and I was not near a drop of water. Okay,
right. Well, the forest was quite wet. There were some puddles.
But man, I was wearing my Speedmaster. Do you think I'm gonna put my hand in the mud? And
I don't know.
I don't know what you know.
I don't know what you do.
And he was saying like,
if I had to point at someone, it would be you. I would have
probably. I would maybe enjoy it. I don't know. But he was saying I would have never worn my Speedmaster today doing a shooting outside in the forest, and it was like, why? Yeah, because there's no water resistance.
Yeah, well, no.
there is water resistance.
Yeah, that's okay, you know.
And before, and so, like, also, I'll be the voice of RJ here. The latest Speedmaster is rated to a degree where it can go swimming. It's 15 meters
because of the METAS certification.
Exactly. Yeah. So it has the rating, it has the chops. You don't have to worry about it. And as with any watch, always make sure to change your gaskets, get it tested,
to be honest,
and don't risk it. Right, like err on the side of caution. But still, for me, that's I would say let's make that the final pet peeve of the episode.
Yeah, no problem.
We can wrap up with a comment of the week from this is actually from the chat with Serica, with Jerome and Gabriel, and it's from Chaida Kuri 4209, who says, highly agree with Jerome's design ethos. I appreciate my Serica even more now. These guys are all about honest watchmaking, made with the passion and love of owning and appreciating watches. So yeah, that's
well put.
That's well put, and Serica in a nutshell. I think that's it. Thanks, guys, for joining me.
No problem.
And thank you for tuning in. As always, like, subscribe, leave comments below, and we'll see you next week for another episode of Fratello Talks. See you then.